This podcast is brought to you by Radio 786.
The South African Revenue Service has collected nearly 1.9 trillion rand in revenue in the last financial year. The Revenue Service's achievement has surpassed National Treasury's expectations by nearly 9 billion rand. Now, SARS has its sights set on collecting 2 trillion rand over the next financial year. With all these figures, what impact does this have on ordinary taxpayers? Joining us now is the Associate Director and Head of Strategic Engagement and Compliance at Tax Consulting SA, and that's Jashwin Baijoo. Jashwin, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Katida, and thanks for helping me on.
So let's look at this 1.9 trillion collected in the last financial year. Is it a big achievement for SARS, and how does that then feed into what Treasury can do with that money?
Yeah, so firstly, I mean, it's a record high for SARS in a single fiscal year, and where we kind of land is it's attributable to a couple things, and one of them is SARS's modernization, so the use of data-driven insights, automation, and basically a coexisting with AI, which is almost SARS's theme going forward. They call it the SARS modernization version 3.0. And then secondly, we've also got something called SARS's compliance program, which includes collections on outstanding tax debts, whether it's through a compromise, which is a partial write-off of a tax debt and interest and penalties, or a payment arrangement. And then on the other side, you've got your audits and verifications. And we're seeing heavy numbers pushing through on things like crypto. Now, in yesterday's revenue announcement, SARS did, towards the end segment, also speak to the modernization of government as a whole and how important it is so that SARS and the rest of your state organs are on par in terms of their systems.
Indeed, and I think that has been the push. As you said, there's always been the narrative of SARS is trying to modernize and get things going and to kind of speed up how and improve, I suppose, also how tax collection is done in South Africa. But are we also seeing what this next target of 2 trillion is that an achievable thing, considering where South Africans are finding themselves? A lot of people are struggling to make ends meet, and some may be even asking for some kind of support from government or some relaxation in terms of the tax collections. Are we going to be seeing how those things may impact on that target that SARS has set for itself?
Correct. So as an example, right, there's a big push on VAT, as we've seen with the recent VAT hike of 0.5%. But a good portion of that, we must then look at VAT refunds and leakage. And I mean, for the last fiscal period, SARS's efforts avoided a leakage, or just on VAT, of 74 billion, thanks to syndicated crime investments, investigative audits, and tax verifications, most of which are powered by AI. So in reaching that collection net, we must also take into consideration SARS's promotion of voluntary compliance. Now, where we say voluntary compliance, well, from the almost 1.9 trillion net collection, the SARS compliance program, and the compliance program is geared at taxpayers that are deliberately being non-compliant, right? There's an element of intention, they're willfully being non-compliant. The revenue collection generated there is only 301.5 billion from effectively 1.9 trillion net. On the gross side, SARS is sitting at 2.303 trillion collected. So for taxpayers that are struggling to make ends meet and things like that, and on the compliance, because that's normally where your outstanding debt comes, right? Well, if you're struggling to make ends meet, you're not going to have the liquidity to then pay your tax debt necessarily. And that's also where SARS, as a revenue collector, has in place debt relief mechanisms for these kinds of taxpayers where, you know, hypothetically you owe 1,200,000 interest and penalties, you're left with 8, and you can then request from SARS a compromise of tax debt based on financial circumstances to write off the interest and penalties, and then to take the capital amount and either shave off a portion, so a legal write-off, or pay it over a number of months.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, we're quickly running out of time, Josh, but I just want to get to this because, of course, the fiscal budget will be tabled, well, today in National Assembly. There's going to be a discussion on a vote as to whether it will be passed or not. And we've already seen there were some contributions made by the SARS Commissioner on this and saying, don't increase the VAT, rather give more capacity to SARS and we can assist the state in terms of recovering some of that revenue. Is that a feasible thing for South Africa to do, considering now that we have seen that the finance minister chose to increase it by 0.5% over 2 years?
So remember, the thing with the VAT is it's a consumption-based tax, and it does not specifically target individuals who are deliberately non-compliant. It does not specifically target the wealthy, like the high net wealth unit. It doesn't specifically target guys making money from crypto, but it applies as almost a blanket approach except for your absolute necessities. Therefore, it impacts not a taxpayer segment, but society from all classes and all income categories. Whereas on the other side, if SARS's capabilities of collection are bolstered, they can then collect on outstanding tax, so historic tax that is outstanding, as tax debt, which will boost the revenue collection for the forthcoming fiscal year.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, we are looking forward to, or we're watching what will be happening in the National Assembly this afternoon. But Jashwin Baijoo, thank you so much for your time this afternoon as well. Associate Director and Head of Strategic Engagement and Compliance at Tax Consulting South Africa.